Good morning, ladies. It's Carol Laurie, and I'm here with Elizabeth Kipp. This is part of Empowered Against Recurrence guest expert interviews. Elizabeth is going to talk about forgiveness, very big topic, and she's going to share her book about pain, chronic pain, and we're going to have a very wonderful conversation. So, Elizabeth, thank you for being here with me and my community, and welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here, Carol. Really, it's an honor.
So, how did you get interested in the topic of forgiveness? And what is forgiveness? Let's just start out with those two
Beautiful.
huge
Yes,
questions.
I I had a an episode with a family member I had loaned a lot of money to, and we had papers drawn up. It was all legal and everything, and it was quite a lot of money. And he paid off about 5 payments, little tiny bits, and then stopped. And I was just anyway. I got upset, and I
Oh,
felt
gee, you got upset. I wonder why.
I tried to. I even tried to press the legal thing. That didn't seem to work. It was very painful. I felt like I'd been dishonored, and I took it really personally.
Oh,
Um,
duh. And betrayed. Betrayal
oh,
is
oh yeah,
part
betrayal, huge betrayal. Yeah, right. So anyway, so I didn't know how to deal with this thing, and I didn't have any real help at the time, and so it sat inside of me and just kind of burned, for about 10 years. And then I was working as an editor on my son's website years ago called The Daily Love, and it was a spiritual blog kind of
nice
site.
name of
And
her.
so anyway, somebody had brought this, I don't know, somebody, I was the editor, and there were 5 blogs a day from all these people, and I did the editing, and I'm sitting there doing the work one day, and I'm like, there was something about forgiveness. I don't know what it was, but I stopped. I heard this voice in my head that said, Elizabeth, you realize you're carrying a grudge against this person. And I was shocked. And I was like, well, I don't do that. And I was like, well, clearly I do. And in that moment, I just stopped what I was doing, and I started to do this work around um, releasing energetically, like on a soul level. Instead of being mad and resentful, I started doing the work around what is it in me that's so wounded that I'm holding on to this resentment, and that's burning inside of me. And I was a chronic pain patient at the time, and that
Okay,
was the
hold on
beginning.
just a second. There's a lot of information there, which I think is really important for women to track.
Mm.
What is it in you that is so wounded that you're holding on to a grudge or resentment against person XYZ? How do we get there? I mean, that's a really big question.
That was a huge journey for me, and I I it was interesting because I realized I was gripping so hard and tight and so mad and hurt, and the hurt underneath it, there was anger, but underneath it was this hurt. And and i and I actually realized that in the moment, although I did much bigger work around this later, which I can share, but I realized that the person that I was dealing with was actually harmed themselves.
Of
And
course. I
and
mean, yes, of
you know
course.
and so all of a sudden I went from "Rrr" to compassion.
Okay,
and,
so
and that
here's
was a
here's
that was
wait,
a
this is really important. We got to help women with this because a lot of you're way far in the journey, and a lot of women don't understand that. First, you have to identify that there is a wound that you have, that person has. Abia Ahava, good morning. Um, there is a wound that you have that person has touched or scraped.
That's
And
correct.
that's called, in Jungian terms, complex. And then you need to understand step number 2 is you need to understand that the person who's doing that, notice it's not doing it to you, who's just acting, is wounded themselves. Of course, we're all wounded, but hopefully we're not, dispersing that out into the universe. So That's a very important step to take, that the person who is acting this way is wounded themselves, and then you need to move into compassion. Is that correct?
That's exactly the process that I worked in that moment. I broke it down to smaller steps later, and I can take you guys through that. But
Sure.
in this particular, you know, 3 hours where I did this work years ago when I first got into forgiveness work, it was very profound for me, and I felt an actual energetic opening and release in the body. It was just like I felt lighter, and I was like, this is amazing. And I felt really, I felt like I had been, grace had just, I had finally realized that grace was right here for me. And I really felt blessed in the moment. I'm going to tell you something. 24 hours later, I get a call from this individual who sent me a check for $20,000.
Can you, I'm just like, how does the universe work? You can't make this stuff up.
I
After
know.
you shifted your internal experience and relationship to yourself,
Yes.
this guy shows up out of the universe with $20,000. Thank you, angels. I just love that.
So that was profound as well. It was a very intense 24-hour period.
From the outcome. You get detached from the outcome and you follow the process.
Yes, and another piece of that, which I feel is, later, farther along the road, understanding this, is that I came from a place from my heart. This was not an intellectual exercise. This was heart energy, and I've just learned that when I come from that space, that's the magic. Yeah. That's, I mean, I love logic and working solutions and stuff like that. It's very useful up there, but it's not everything.
No, of course not. So that's a beautiful story. So what is your definition of forgiveness? That's what I'm interested.
Well, it's really, in an ancestral clearing, which is I'm an ancestral clearing practitioner. It's a registered trademark process of helping people clear stuff from their lineage. We use the definition of offering up that which no longer serves, which is a very kind of general, a very general explanation. However, I think I'm a little bit closer to being kind of trauma informed, because I have a lot of trauma training.
Good.
Is that it's forgiveness is actually doing the work around the wound that we're talking about, the inner wound, so that there's no letting go. It just dissolves on its own. We don't have to let go of anything. We don't really have to offer up anything. We just do the work. And part of the work is, for me, is realizing the divine connection. If I'm stuck, I just ask for help. Please help me with this. Clearly, I can't do it by myself, and I get this guidance. So this is a co-creative process between the wounding that's in me and the healing power that's also within me, which is all divine energy anyway, if that makes sense.
So there's a couple things. One is to realize that you need help, and you can ask for help to the angels, and you can also ask for help from people.
Yes.
And I think that the message is that community and guidance in our society, we're too insulated. In the olden days, before everybody had their own home, we lived in community. And if you were not feeling well, you went to the wise woman or the wise guy, and you got whatever, incense and feathers and healing. And I don't mean to be dismissive of that. I think that's a beautiful thing. We don't have that anymore. So we have to reach out to people such as yourself. And in my community of women with breast cancer, we offer that kind of support. And I'm also committed to the women that I work with to find local or even Zoom therapists who are the right person to help them get unstuck. But I think getting unstuck is really important, because when you're closed in your heart, and angry at a certain person for XYZ incident or lifetime of whatever, that creates trauma in you. And that trauma is then your responsibility to heal from. It might have been sometimes we are the victim of trauma, absolutely. But as we become adults, we have a choice to heal that from a different perspective. And I believe that when we're young and in certain instances, you are definitely the victims of trauma, correct?
Oh yes, but as we become adults, it's our job to heal the wounds that we what remains unresolved in the nervous system, is whatever's locked up in the nervous system is going to show up in the mind, right? Psychology follows physiology. So anyway, that's another reason why I'm a yoga teacher as well. And it's so important because the issues.
Well, it's the same thing. It's about keeping the energy flowing smoothly in the river. That's my analogy, right?
It's beautiful. Yes. And the river's never the same. We never step in the same river, right?
Correct. It's moving every second. It changes and it adapts to the environment. Whatever is locked up in the nervous system gets stuck. What did you say?
Well, whatever gets unresolved trauma shows up in the tissues, and I think that term "stuck" is just from
shows up in the tissues. That's fine.
Yeah, it shows up there. It gets held there. So,
how do women start? Where do you start?
Yeah, so one of the things that this experience was so profound for me. I was like, and I have this logical mind.
You have a logical mind, but it's also connected to your spirituality and your inside guidance mechanism.
It is. I have the science background, and so I have one foot in the spiritual world and one foot in the science world. I'm kind of a bridge in the middle. And so I thought, well, there has to be a process. We need a process. We need a step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through this. What would that be? And I went through my own process, and I came up with the first step is presence, right? We need to be able to face our resistance around the hurt, the feeling, the sensation around the hurt we experienced, and allow ourselves to feel where it's expressing itself as sensation in the body.
As a homeopath, that's one of the first questions I ask. What sensation do you have when you talk about XYZ? And sensation is a very interesting word because it's not only feeling, right? It's talk about your definition of sensation, because I think it's a fascinating word. People look at me and they go, what does that question mean?
Yes, because I as a chronic pain sufferer for so many years, I dissociated from my body as much as possible.
Right? Well, that's understandable, right?
I had so much sensation in the body. I was just like, I'm out of here. Right? Anyway, and I would fight it, and it was just a mess. Sensation is, people get confused with emotion, feeling, and sensation, feeling. Right. They're not the same.
No.
Emotion can bring up sensation in the body, but it's sensations purely, what are you physically feeling? I'm feeling tingling in my in the skin of my arms, and I'm feeling a little bit of tension around my chest, and I have a little bit of tightness in my throat. That's a little, pulling in my left leg, those kinds of twisting or piercing or stabbing, or those kinds of, they don't have to all be negative, but just, right, those kinds of statements versus I feel sad or I feel angry. Those are emotional. That's not sensation.
Feelings are emotions, right? And emotions are feelings.
Yeah. Sensations accompany those.
Yes,
but we try and get into the sensation below the I'm sad. I feel heavy in my shoulders. the sadness is, well, how does that, what is sensation is that? Oh, I feel heaviness in my shoulders, and I feel like I'm kind of bent over, I'm collapsed onto my heart, and I'm holding myself, I'm feeling tightness here, and that kind of thing. So we're learning a different language, and it's helpful to tease those two things apart.
I agree 100%. Learning a different language is really important when you're in your healing, when you're on your healing path, because our society has no language for healing. They have language for treating disease after you've worn down your body or aren't taking care of yourself. And I just have to say, one of the messages we get as Americans when we watch television and those commercials are so toxic, especially for women, because they show a house where it's a mess and the woman's depressed. And why is it the woman's responsibility to keep this house together, number one? And number two, what happened before that made her not feel well? And then she takes a pill and the house is all spick and span. Why is it the woman's job to clean up this house? Where are the other people who live with her? So that's the messaging we get, as women. It's like our job to keep the house. Or maybe maybe there's one ad where a woman's at work and she's not feeling well. It's like, it takes a lot to keep yourself vibrant and have sparkle. I like that word, sparkle. Be connected to your inner self. And our society doesn't support any of that. So what you're talking about is really staying connected and doing using that to heal your wounds and get to the place where you can work on the topic of forgiveness. So let's go back to that, because we're intuitive talkers and we're just following, but I want to talk about forgiveness because it's an important topic that no one has ever talked about before in my community, with my community.
Oh, cool. So we begin with presence. As I said, the second thing is to understand, what meaning are we making of what happened? What's the story I'm telling myself? Oh, so-and-so didn't pay me back. That means, I must be a bad person, or maybe I'm not worth the effort, or, who knows, there's all kinds of stories, or, they don't love me, or whatever there's all kinds of stories that the mind can come up with. So we need to understand, what's the meaning I'm making of the thing that happened?
I'm thinking that person's a jerk and it has nothing to do with you.
Well, there's that too.
Responsible. So when I was an undergraduate in college, I did research, which was published, on when people succeed or fail, what makes them think of what happened. Do you succeed or fail because there's something the matter with you? Or do you succeed or fail or because the environment wasn't set up to support you, or whatever it is? And the people who thought that they failed because of themselves had lower self-esteem than the people who thought that they failed and did, like the guy was a jerk. So I think that it's really important to understand and be aware of what's messaging you're getting in your mind. Oh, I didn't get my money because there's something the matter with me, or I didn't get my money because the guy's a jerk. Two different cognitive acknowledgments of the same situation, right?
Yeah. The other part is, the third part is accept our humanness. So anger and frustration are all part of it. Everybody feels this stuff. It's kind of like, I don't know about everybody else, but I grew up in a household that was like, we don't feel our feelings. We don't acknowledge emotions. We're going to put all of that under the rug and just live in the head. That's kind of the way I was raised. So for me to go from that space to this space of learning to know what feelings I'm having, sensations and feelings I'm having, and accepting them for what they're, and not calling any of them wrong, is just a really important thing. No judgment here, just observation. Be a curious scientist.
The minute you go into the right and the wrong and the good and the bad, you're in what's known in Jungian terms is a complex. And when you split like that and everything gets black or white, you've disconnected from your essential self. So the good, bad, right, wrong paradigm is something that we really want to work to turn the volume down on.
Yeah, beautiful. Then the fourth step is become willing to forgive. I didn't say forgive. I said just become willing. Can you become willing um, to to release this thing that you've been hanging on to? Just the willingness. And then the next one is ask for help. You can ask for help from a friend, from a higher authority, creator, the angels, whatever. But we're asking. We're not
That's
doing
the
this
fifth step,
alone.
is asking for help.
We're doing this and we're connecting back, because in this resentment place, what's happening? As you said, we're disconnected. The process of forgiveness includes getting back connected again. We're going from protection and defensive mode, which is this shut down trauma response space, into connection and regulation again. So it's really important. Then again, drop the judgments about the situation. Again, become the curious observer. Oh, what's happening here? Also, we talked earlier about dropping the outcome. We're just going to work the process, and whatever the outcome is the outcome. And so I'm letting go. I'm not buying into my fear of uncertainty about the outcome of the process. I'm just going to work the process and allow it to play out. And and then the last piece is as where we started. Live in the present. So it's really important to be in the present moment without judgment and curious, from this place of curious self-compassion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So that's kind of the basic process. And I have if that's okay, I have a program I developed called the 40 Days of Forgiveness, which is it's actually 41-day email. You get an email every day, and it has a blog about one aspect of forgiveness. And I came up with, believe it or not, 41 different aspects of forgiveness, which was amazing, because I got to about 16 and I was like, well, now what do I do? Because I want to go to 40. I ended up with 41 because I had a bonus.
40, why is 40 an important number for you?
40, well, it's in the yoga world, we do 40-day practices because it takes at least 30 days to break a habit and start to build a new one. And that extra 3 days after that extra 10 days really helps to lock that new behavior in. So
like 40 years in the desert too.
Well, there's that too.
It's an energetic thing. It's like, yeah. So how do people find out about the 40 Days of Forgiveness program?
So you can
URL.
You can go to my website and just go to the store page or my resource page. Elizabeth-Kipp.com is my website, and just go to the resource page and you'll see it there. But it's an email. You get a blog about forgiveness, and then an ancestral clearing prayer around that, which is kind of another aspect of forgiveness that I do. And then there's the teaching, the how and why of forgiveness, each one. And then there's a meditation that helps support the process. It's pretty sweet. And I came up with 16 different aspects, and I was like, well, okay, now I don't know what else to do. And you know what happened? Higher power had a sense of humor, because I got an assignment I got an assignment on the next 24 kinds of forgiveness. I got an assignment. Take this, forgive for that.
Oh, cool.
And that's how I developed this program. It's pretty funny. I just, lots of sense of humor up in the upper realms there.
Yeah, when you're not feeling well, you have to get to a certain place to have a sense of humor. But because when you're stuck in your complex or you're not feeling well, it's very hard to see the forest through the trees. And that's why it's so important to reach out for help, because nobody can fix this themselves. And in our society, especially women, have this thing that we should be able to do it ourselves. Do you think that you can fix your car yourself, fix your own teeth, do neurosurgery yourself? Get professional help. I think that's really important. And so, Elizabeth, you were in chronic pain and you have a book.
I do. I wrote a book, The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power. It's a little bit about my story of I had over 40 years of chronic pain, and the doctors just assumed I was going to be that way for the rest of my life.
Oh, I'm sure you were offered antidepressants 15 times.
Oh, I was on.
Oh, let's just give you some of this. Oh, you need a little bit of that. Oh, it's psychological, or, right?
Oh, man. I was on opiates and benzodiazepines for 32 years until I found a doctor that actually understood chronic pain. And just for the listeners, chronic pain is not just physical. It's any pain that's felt, physical, emotional, spiritual, any pain that's felt. 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more is chronic. The brain can't tell the difference between a broken bone and a broken heart. It all sends the same signal. It hurts. So a grief experience is a chronic pain experience, right? Depression is a chronic pain experience.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a low back issue, which was a chronic pain experience. But they until I met the Dr. Peter Prescott, who took me through his program, he passed away, by the way. But all the doctors said, you're going to be in chronic pain for the rest of your life. And they never asked the question.
We have to press pause because this is a big, big issue here. If any doctor ever says to you, you're going to be in XYZ for the rest of your life, you want to say politely, thank you and goodbye, because nobody can tell you that.
That's right.
Nobody has
the
right or the psychic ability to say, oh, you have 6 months to live, or, oh, you're going to be in chronic pain for the rest of your life. For those of you who are watching this and somebody tells that to you, reach out to me. I will find you somebody who is a real healer and a real physician, and to help you on a healing path, because that is really not okay. That physicians would speak to anybody. You're going to be in pain for if there's humility in that doctor, they're going to say, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm going to refer you to XYZ. And there are now, when Elizabeth first started, this wasn't such a specialty, but there are a lot of chronic pain clinics. And as an acupuncturist, there are acupuncturists who specialize in that. And acupuncture, for anybody who is in chronic pain, acupuncture and an anti-inflammatory way to eat, and doing the deep emotional work, no matter what else happens, you need all of those. You need a comprehensive, integrative approach, taking the best of both worlds, regular medicine and the work that practitioners such as myself do.
And that's what my book's about.
That was just very upsetting that you were told that.
Well, that was my book. That was what my book was about, was like, how do you navigate through this world? Because they're not only being dishonest, they've forgotten the basic science.
No, they're not. No, they're not. It's not that they're dishonest. They've forgotten.
Yes, they have forgotten.
Yeah. I think they think they're being honest, and that's the sad.
Well, they may, but it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding of the scientific framework and our understanding of healing. So there's science, which is this space where in the all that is, where we can comment on what we can observe, measure, and describe, period. But we can't comment on anything outside of that. And the scientific method and Western medicine lives in this space.
Well, they've forgotten that because
they heal. We heal in the all that is, this in this science space, but also outside of it. And so if they don't know the answer, I would have preferred they said, I don't have an answer for you.
Exactly.
You need to look somewhere else, instead of saying, no, you won't get better. They're assuming I won't get better, but they never asked the question, why isn't Elizabeth healing? Now, I had a science background, so I was able to break this down and see what their kind of their error in logic was. And so, but this is why I get on podcasts and stuff, because I'm with you on this. We have to be very careful about who we're sitting in front of and what we're listening to.
Well, you have to have a zero tolerance for BS.
It was inaccurate what they said.
Yeah, it's dangerous for your life and for your health. And if somebody ever says to you, you're going to be this for the rest of your life. Or I've had women call me up, I've been told I only have 6 months to live. And I go, well, I don't know, maybe, but let's see what we can do to help you heal as much as possible. I mean, there needs to be, like, who am I to say somebody has XYZ to live, or you're going to be in chronic pain? I don't believe that. I believe healing is always possible.
That's right.
Even under extenuating circumstances. And I think that's the message. Healing is always possible, and to never accept, if somebody sits there in a white jacket, don't take that as the gospel according to God or according to truth. You are your own gospel.
Well, this is the thing. The healing power lives within us. The doctor can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but it can't tell the body how to heal. The power of that healing lives within. And so, part of my journey has been like, don't give my power away. Let's not do that.
Don't give your power away, women.
Yeah. Let's just understand the power structure here. The healing power lives within. So anyway, yeah. So that's what my book's about.
Well, Elizabeth, hang on after we end our live. I just want to talk to you for a few more minutes. And ladies, thank you so much. This has been a really meaningful topic and time with Elizabeth. And I really appreciate you taking time to be here with me in the audience, Elizabeth. And this is Carol Laurie signing off for now, and there'll be more later. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye for now.